I was president of the Black Student Union, had never registered to vote, but I was very active in the community. I actually was working with the Black Panther Party. And I had a course in government, and part of the course requirement was to work in a presidential primary campaign. Well, the candidates who were running, it was McGovern, Muskie, Humphrey. I looked at their record, I looked at what they stood for, and I told my professor, just flunk me. I'm just not going to work in any of their campaigns. I'll flunk. And I was serious about that because I knew that I didn't believe they reflected the issues, nor the experience, nor the commitment to my community, to the country, and to the world. And so I was ready to flunk the class. Never flunked a class in my life. As chair of the Black Student Union, as president of Black Student Union, I invited Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, first African-American woman elected to Congress. I invited her to come speak to the BSU. And she came, and she gave an unbelievable speech. But in her speech, she said she was running for president. I said, what? And I went up to her afterwards, and I said, Congresswoman Chisholm, I have this class that I'm about ready to flunk. But now that I've listened to you, I mean, you've talked about your commitment to education. She was against the Vietnam War. She talked about the elimination of poverty. She talked about building multiracial coalitions. She was bilingual. She supported immigrant rights. I said, you're the candidate. I said, I didn't know you were running for president. She says, well, my dear, the news media hasn't really recognized that I'm a serious candidate, but I am. And then she challenged me. She said, you know, if you're really serious about changing the world and changing your community, now you have to remember, I was a young single mother on welfare, public assistance, and trying to figure out how to take care of my kids, trying to figure out how to get through college. I was surviving just day to day, but I was determined that I was going to make something out of my life and make something, you know, make the community better. And that's why I was working with the Black Panther Party. But she really challenged me to take it to the next level. And she says, if you're really serious, you got to register to vote. I said, oh, no, not me. I'm not going to register. That's bourgeois politics, right? No. So she convinced me, though. I said, okay, so, well, maybe I'll consider passing this class. How do I get involved in your campaign? And I explained to her that I was flunking. And, you know, I would now reconsider because I liked what she stood for. She was a true catalyst for change. She was unbought and unbossed. I mean, all of that she was. And so she says, well, my dear, I don't have a lot of money for a national effort. If you believe in me and if you really want to get involved, then go find out who's doing what. I'm leaving this up to my grassroots supporters. And it's up to you to figure that out. And so she put the burden back on me. And fast forward, I think about our great president, Barack Obama, and his campaign, because it was really reflective of how Shirley Chisholm ran hers. And so what happened was I talked to my professor, and she said, well, go figure it out. And I looked around, went and talked to some people in the community, and no one had really put together any operation in Alameda County. This was in Oakland. And so my professor said, well, you know, what are you going to do? So what happened is I ended up talking to the president of the student body, who was Sandy Gaines, and someone who became my chief of staff in recent years after I was elected to Congress, but who was a student then at Laney College, Sandre Swanson. And we talked, and we ended up organizing the Shirley Chisholm Northern California presidential primary from my class at Mills College, and I got an A in the course. And I went on to Miami and became a Chisholm delegate. And that was really my entree into politics. I met Congressman Dellums, and I talked to him, and I met him during the Chisholm campaign, and I was going into graduate school, and he said, well, why don't you come back and try to be an intern? So I applied for Cal in the Capitol. I was at UC Berkeley later doing my graduate work, and there was a program, Cal in the Capitol, and that was a great intern program that allowed students to come back to Washington, D.C. And this was Watergate was 73, I think. So this was in 73. But again, I have these two little kids. And I'm a single mom on welfare, and I had a little Volkswagen. I'm saying, how am I going to do this? Move to Washington, D.C. I'm trying to put together my community mental health center, which I ended up putting together, raising money for that, working with the Panthers. I mean, how am I going to do this? But I figured it out. I parked my car in the driveway. I sent my kids to their grandmother on a farm in Texas, and I came on to Washington, D.C. After I worked for Ron, went back to California and worked out of his California office, and then I decided I wanted to set up a business, and I ended up setting a business up. I took a leave of absence from his staff, and he told me, he said, well, you may want to not quit, you may want to take a leave of absence. You got these kids going into college. I mean, what is wrong with you? And I think I was turning 40 then, and I said, well, I want to see if I can really employ some people. I want to create some jobs. Well, I ended up setting up a company called Lee Associates. Well, it was W.C. Parrish Corporation. That was my grandfather's name, DBA Lee Associates. Ended up going into business for 11 years, facilities management, administrative support. Ended up, I think, when I came to Congress, of course, I sold the company, and I believe we had probably 400 to 500 employees. Yeah, and so, very successful. Didn't make any money because I was a union contractor, and of course my employees made the money. We had benefits. I was a Teamster contractor, you know, the whole 9 yards. And so the rest is history. I wanted to be on Appropriations Committee, first of all, because I believe that our resources, our tax dollars need to be reprioritized. It's important, I think, to have members of the Appropriations Committee who really believe that our tax dollars should be put into building schools and providing education rather than building more prisons, you know, and our federal dollars should be about providing universal health care for all rather than feeding, you know, the multinational corporations and the military industrial complex and all of the, you know, where the money goes. I mean, you know, you look at the defense budget, it's, you know, it's what, 600 billion plus. I mean, and there are some serious ways we can reorder our federal budget, keeping with a strong national security. Our country will always be a superpower. But there's so much waste, fraud, and abuse in the military budget that we need to really get serious about that. So I wanted to get on the Appropriations Committee so I could look at where the money was. And so I could say, look, let's look at our priorities as a nation, as a community, as a world, and see how we can really begin to create a world that's worthy of our children to inherit. And that means education, transportation, creating jobs. It means an energy policy that makes sense for all. It means dealing with environmental pollution and degradation in our communities. All that's about money. And so I think that, you know, there's some of us who want to see our money used wisely, and I don't believe it has been used wisely. And then with regard to foreign affairs, I have always been involved since I was 16 when I moved to England. I lived in England for 2 years. And I got very interested and involved in international relations during the time I lived in England. Congressman Don Payne is here. We're working on a few visits and CODELs, and I'm on his subcommittee on foreign affairs, and I've just got to commend Congressman Payne, who chairs the Africa subcommittee, Africa and Global Health subcommittee, because all of the work that I do as it relates to HIV and AIDS, as it relates to global poverty, as it relates to the genocide in Darfur, as it relates to getting Nelson Mandela off of the terrorist list, which we did, is a result of Congressman Payne's support and his brilliance and his leadership. And coming to Congress, and I have to say this since we're doing this, when I first ran for Congress, you know, raising money is difficult, right?
one of the first checks I got was from Congressman Don Payne. I didn't even know Congressman Payne, but Ron talked to Don and asked him to support me, and I'll always remember that because that helped me get going. And here I end up on his subcommittee. So thank you, Don. So we're a global family, we're a global village. The world is very small, and African Americans have to be part of the policy debate in terms of making sure there's equity and fairness in our foreign policy as it relates to Africa and the Caribbean. Can I just say, though, members of the Congressional Black Caucus are the smartest members on the Hill, and they're the most committed members. And, you know, oftentimes I don't think they get their due because I see them, like Congressman Payne sees, each and every day making inroads into so many policies that oftentimes the public will never know it was members of the CBC who weighed in and got the job done. We have now 17 subcommittee chairs and 4 full committee chairs. And I mean, when you look at our energy bill, when you look at our health care bill, when you look at the economic recovery bill, when you look at this new transportation bill that's coming up, CBC members are really driving it. And it's really an amazing body of individuals. You know, I'm reminded of the scripture, by their deeds shall ye know them. I think that is a very important standard or principle to remember when you're considering running for public office, because if you haven't really worked in the community, then you don't have that credibility that I think individuals need to be able to run for public office. You know, as Congressman Payne said, you know, your involvement at the grassroots level, whatever you're doing, people will recognize you as a leader and encourage you and support you. I really, when I see people that pop up and just say, oh, I'm going to run for office, and have no history of struggle, or no grassroots involvement, or no real connection to the community, then I have to wonder what type of a public servant, because that's what this really is. It's about public service. What kind of a public servant will this person be? And so that connection to the community and to people and the passion for issues and really wanting to make some change, people will recognize you and will encourage you to run and will support you, and then you will win whatever race you're running.